Before Caitlin Clark's season-ending injury, WNBA tickets were averaging $89. The moment she went down, price crashed nearly 30%, plummeting to $62 a seat. Very big chunk of the total attendance in WNBA is from the Indiana Fever. They have the second highest home attendance, and teams are literally moving arenas. There's a lot of reasons for this, but obviously the biggest reason is Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark literally being out, and again, she's only on one team.
What happens when the one player who carried your team into the playoffs isn't even allowed to take the court? Caitlin Clark turned the Fever from a bottom-dwelling franchise into a playoff contender. But when it mattered most, the front office shut her down. And here's the twist. Clark herself admitted she was ready and desperate to play.
So I obviously saw the news last night that Caitlin Clark is officially out for the season. And this news came from Caitlin Clark herself. She posted it on her social media pages with a long note, and it was actually sad. And I was like, I'm not surprised, but I'm definitely feeling this. Like, it's actually official. We're not going to see Caitlin Clark play for the rest of the season. Now, from Caitlin's perspective, it seemed like she was really trying, and she was really trying to do everything she possibly could to get back on the court. Maybe she was the one who had the hope that she could get back out there.
Why would Indiana choose caution at the peak of their momentum? That's the controversy everyone's talking about, and the real story might shock fans who believe this was finally the Fever's breakthrough season. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video.
So yeah, a lot of teams, whether it be the Lynx opening the upper bowl, whether it be the Wings, the Dream, the Sky, all of these teams moving games. All of these teams are moving games for the Indiana Fever, regardless of who it is. What a lot of people are going to be doing, trying to sell tickets. The seats for the playoffs, I would say the Indiana Fever playoff seats would have been, honestly, like nearly $1,000 in. They all have to sell those seats. And a lot of people don't want to go, and it's super cheap. Like, it's a lot easier to fill a 10,000 seat arena without Caitlin Clark than to fill 20,000. So you're going to have to find a way to do it anyway.
Imagine going from empty seats, where ushers outnumber the crowd, to arenas packed so tight people can barely find space to stand. That's what happened with the Fever the moment Caitlin Clark pulled on that jersey. A team that was treated like a running joke suddenly looked like the hottest ticket in women's basketball. And it wasn't a slow build either. It was instant. Overnight, the Fever went from being ignored to dominating headlines, and everybody wanted a front row seat. For years, Indiana couldn't shake the label of being at the very bottom. Opponents looked forward to facing them because wins felt automatic.
The true fact of the matter is that Caitlin Clark has been injured since before the season started. And they didn't announce that Caitlin wouldn't be playing for that game until I was literally already in my seats and I saw her come out and she wasn't in her warm-up gear. She was in sweat. A lot of the reporting around this also alluded to the fact that it wasn't because of the physicality on the court. Now, this was a quad strain, right? But she's had plenty of injuries this season. They've all been soft tissue injuries. They've hopped from one leg to another. Then she had the bone bruise. A lot of the reporting around this was saying that none of these injuries were related.
Fans didn't expect much more than another double-digit loss. Those losing seasons piled up year after year with no spark to change the story. But one rookie threw everything off balance.
Fever fan base has lost so much trust in the Fever organization this year, and not only from the injury reporting, but it stems from the injury reporting. And I've placed a lot of the blame on the reporters. I'm like, how are the reporters not able to get to the bottom of this and at least give us something that feels like the truth? There's been some very, very weird injury reports this season, and the math isn't mathing. And I've also been one to defend the organization to a certain extent because you don't always want to give away too much information.
Clark's presence flipped the tone. Every game became a chance for another record and another highlight. And before anyone caught their breath, the standings started looking different. Wins stacked that never came before, and suddenly playoff talk was no longer some fantasy, it was real. Fans told stories about standing in line hours before doors opened, parents bringing kids just to see Clark play in person. On TV, the numbers soared at a level usually reserved for the most familiar stars. One pass that threaded through two defenders, one logo three-point shot when the game was tight, Those moments turned what could have been throwaway nights into big statements. The Fever looked alive again. And the crazy part, the playoff clinching game happened while Clark wasn't even playing. Yet all anyone could talk about was how her impact made this run possible at all. She gave them their first postseason shot since 2015, but the twist was she wouldn't even suit up for it. And that's where the real question starts. If Clark was the answer all along, then why take her away at the very peak? If Clark was cleared by doctors, why in the world did the Fever refuse to put her back on the floor?
I actually think had Caitlin Clark been playing, it would be nearly a grand into this game. I also think they'd be in the 4-5 matchup, but at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter too much. The WNBA won't fix their whistle. I don't know how much of Caitlin Clark's injury has been caused by the whistle. People still showed up and paid less. Well, yeah. Must be sitting on the roof for $62. Went to a Mystics game and still cost sitting seats to actually see the game. For Angel Reese's game against the Liberty, she probably not paying. I think you can do it in a roundabout way because the whistle's so bad meant she felt like she needed to bulk up and she did something wrong in her off season. Then in a roundabout way, you can blame the injuries. You can blame the whistle, but I wouldn't necessarily do that.
That's the part that never made sense to fans. The official story sounded simple. They wanted to protect her long-term health, play the cautious route, and make sure she didn't risk re-injury. On paper, that sounds like a responsible move, but when you're looking at a player who had been practicing, moving well, and openly saying she wanted to be out there, it starts to feel a lot less clear. Clark herself admitted she missed the energy of being on the court. She said she felt ready, and anyone who saw her body language knew she was frustrated to be stuck watching. Teammates echoed that feeling too. A few of them let it slip that they had been preparing as if she'd be ready for a return, leaning on her presence in practices, expecting her to lead when the lights turned on. That only made the decision look stranger from the outside. Were the reports about her injury downplaying progress? Were updates being stretched out to fit a different plan? It got even harder for the public to trust when the injury reports contradicted themselves week to week. First, it was a precautionary sit, then it turned into something more vague, and the timing always seemed just a little off. For a fan base hyped about its first playoff run in nearly a decade, those mixed messages felt like being strung along. The playoffs were sitting right there on the table, and the Fever pulled back the reins at the moment everyone wanted to see Clark ride. The fallout was immediate. TV numbers lowered and resale ticket demand slid. That leaves fans wondering if the front office cared more about protecting a financial asset than chasing wins. And in the process, they left both the fans and Clark herself feeling betrayed. The Fever probably thought sitting Clark out kept her safe, but the move sent a different message. Fans didn't see it as protection, they saw it as pulling away the very reason they cared again. That kind of trust is harder to rebuild than any injury. So I want to know what you think. Did the front office rob both Clark and the fans of a true playoff moment? Or was this just smart business thinking years down the line? Because at the end of the day, was sidelining the WNBA's biggest draw the safe play or the mistake that lingers?